What's up? Hey, it's been a while. Really. I can't say much has really changed except for this new desk, new computer, new angle that we're viewing in. I got a good shot of the bookcase right here. And the best by far, a new intro. Let's go.
Poor characterization, weak narration from the plunge overtaking the final relation to the pointless plot. Description is so apparent, the Romans held some in the 1,000-yard stare. Book is thick, but nothing will stick. Gotta take my chances, well, that flick. But the worst of all, the reason I we didn't get far on the 8-page deep.
Where can I find this story?
Bookstore's closed, the cafe's packed, nothing left to do but sing a little rap.
Well, now I'll just keep
Scan the book, pop in the DVD, and take some time, come read with me.
By 2045, the world will have gone to shit. You thought 2012 was our time of doom? Nah. 2020? Psh, please. Inscribed in the scrolls, 2045 is the supposed year we pay for our sins, undergo incredible suffering with no way to shield our eyes away from the cruel reality that awaits us. Our only chances of hope lies in the hands of one man, one genius, and his name is Ernest Cline. Now imagine a world where you can just escape the present and live with unlimited possibility. A world where you can travel to your favorite paintings, movies, virtual concerts where you can go and see your favorite paintings, musicians, unlimited time playing your favorite paintings, games like Puckman and Donkey Kong. And if you don't like the 80s, well then you can get the fuck out. A man like Cline did not consider your interest, but just his own when he wrote Ready Player One. After one bad experience working as a screenwriter for his passion project Fanboys, which was subjected to several changes to the story and characters inspired by his real-life friends, he decided to pursue a career as a novelist, in the hopes that his ideas and visions wouldn't be altered. And one might ask, how did that turn out? Well, the comments speak for themselves. Willy Wonka meets The Matrix. A frackin' good read. A gunshot of fun. Delightful. The grown-ups Harry Potter. Yeah. Well, they actually did make a grown-ups Harry Potter, and let me tell you, it wasn't that great either. Most of the time, there's a lot of consideration taken when adapting a novel to make sure there's enough to please the fans of the book. And then you have Ready Player One, where it feels like two completely different stories. Spielberg took one look at the book and was like, okay, yeah, I see, Gates, that's pretty cool, alright. I have a few suggestions though. How about... No. I've been told several times how different these two were, but finally seeing it with my own eyes was just, wow! Yeah, no, there's a good amount to be discussed today, but not here. Not in reality. Oh god, no. What are we, cavemen? Look, if we're gonna dissect Cline's dystopian, we're gonna need a lot more than the camera and the microphone. Luckily, I have a solution. See, with these, we should be able to cross through the next dimensional portalation with ease and explore the oasis as much as we please. How is this possible? I don't know. Don't ask me, I just go with the flow. You're free to join me, but without the necessary skemoodics and blue pants, or even the right keys, you won't even be able to access the gates. Don't worry though, I made sure to get all our necessary products before recording. Shit, where's the mouse? Alright, we're good to go. Sit back and relax as we explore the oasis and see if the changes made were for the worst or for the best. Let's check it out. So do you guys remember in Willy when the entire human race left Earth because it became inhabitable and they escaped into space? Well, imagine a scenario in which they never left and lived with their problems. Chaotic climate change, half a dozen wars, poverty, disease, you get the picture. Just look into your feed or outside your window. 2040 sounds like a hellish time to be in, with little solutions being made except for the invention of the Oasis, created by James Halliday. Intended to become a grand simulation for MMOs, it became a way of life for most people to escape the terrible reality around them. It gave people virtual jobs, so many entertainment opportunities, and allowed you to become your true self, like Sonic or Hello Kitty, even this funny looking fungus. This right here is Cline's best work. Forgetting all other aspects that make a good story, the world building is incredible and lists reasons why the Oasis works as an alternative solution. Virtual schooling, microtransactions to keep revenue generating, an enormous playground and sectors for millions of users to explore and create their own personal space. Truly, anything you could imagine, the Oasis could provide. Except, either sleep, we're still human. Keep in mind, this was written back in 2011 and some of the practices presented here will make you think this book had some influence. I'm specifically talking about the portion of the book where it discusses live streaming and anyone having their own streaming channel. Some would just play reruns of 80 shows and then others would just document their entire Oasis journey for the masses. It definitely wasn't as big back then as it is now, where kids nowadays would just want to grow up to be streamers. This book sells you on the Oasis and often makes the real world look bland and dangerous by comparison. I mean, in this world, there are vending machines that sell you legit guns, as easy as buying a Coke. But who am I kidding though? Does it feel that different from our own reality? But yeah, you can tell that Klein put so much time and effort into the Oasis and explaining every aspect of it, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a struggle to read through. Like, my god. As enchanting as the premise sounds, the execution is unfortunately dry and will most likely dull your eyes over time with blocks and blocks of tiresome descriptions that are pretty hit or miss. The history about Holiday? Now, that was cool. But all the descriptions and extensive details about Wade's gear and setup? Pass. It's not entirely bad, but it's not something I would reread or recommend any average reader. All I would really have to do is just show them a couple pages, doesn't matter where, and then flip it and ask if they want to read 372 pages of this. Just all of this. Am I even aiming this right? But the most ironic thing about this read for me was that it takes place in this virtual simulation, but the story immersion is surprisingly lacking. The one thing I hate in books, when there's too much telling and not enough showing. A part of this book takes several pauses to explain things, imagining the audience has never touched a console or computer in their entire lives. I get that it was trying to appeal to a wider audience, but in doing so, the story itself suffered with dragged out explanations. Also, I wish the story wasn't being retold. In the prologue, Wade tells the reader that he's going to set the record straight, and the rest of the book is just him recounting his victory on Halliday's egg. Because of that, you get lots of summaries that take away the chance to experience the Oasis through the eyes of Wade. There are thousands of simulated areas within the Oasis, side quests that Wade goes through while searching for the main keys, but those exist as a passing mention, and the scenes that are fleshed out doesn't grasp my attention as much. This was an aspect I believe the movie rectifies, as how they put it.
We should stop talking about it and start showing it.
Definitely not saying that the movie's Oasis is better than the books, not at all. It just gives you the bare bones version and leaves out some fun or important details regarding the system. A perfect example would be how the book established the use of the Oasis with treadmills, so you can walk freely without bumping into things. And then you have the movie, during the climax, with a shot of some users just going apeshit on the streets. Like, this is straight up dumb. How are there no real casualties from this? So in terms of world building, the book wins by a landslide. Like, there's no questions about that. But that is the only compliment this book is getting from me. As for the rest of the story, oh boy! Let's discuss the hunt. Where do I even begin? This right here is the meat of the story, the gush and the gusher, a plot so appetizing you just can't look away. As USA Today put it, Willy Wonka meets the Matrix. James Halliday dies and reincarnates as his online persona, Anorak, who offers up his entire fortune and rights to the Oasis for any man, woman, orc, ninja, corporate Superman, anyone who can prove their worth by finding the 3 keys and completing 3 gates. But for the movie, the gates were scratched and just focused on the keys. This is where most of the differences derive from, and by comparison, the movie took a humanistic approach with the challenges, which are much more difficult to solve in the book and really required you to think like Halliday. For instance, the book's way of gaining the first copper key was through a game of joust, which would then lead the player to a gate that held clues for the next key. This first gate wasn't much of a game, but a really cool interactive simulation of the movie War Games, in which Wade had to play the role of Matthew Broderick's character, earning points depending on how accurate the portrayal was. He'd have to perform through the entire movie before getting a clue to the second key. So actually, the book held 6 challenges for the contestant to accomplish, ranging from Zork to Monty Python. Even having some knowledge of Schoolhouse Rock was essential. James Halliday was a real man of culture. Now the movie's challenges were serving 2 different purposes, the first being different forms of competition that will provide the best visual experience. A race through Warner City seems much more appealing than watching someone hunched over an arcade machine for an hour. Honestly, I'd watch it over again for that scene with The Shining. I consider it a nod to the book's interactive movie simulation and just an overall fun challenge that recreated the environment and captured all the best scenes from that film. Do I wish these challenges were more challenging? Yes. The final challenge is finding the hidden Easter egg in the game Adventure, one of Halliday's all-time favorite games. For anyone who read the book, this is pretty laughable because any Halliday expert, or just anyone who can do an easy search, would know how common knowledge this is. And for this to be left as the final challenge is just... really? But that's where the second purpose comes in. Klein wrote those challenges in the book with such difficulty to give Wade more of an advantage since he practically grew up learning about Halliday, while Spielberg used them to carry an underlying narrative about Halliday's personal life and uncovering some parallels between him and Wade. We'll get to that later, but first I want to discuss some issues I had with this hunt, mainly about Wade and Artemis being the only one to be the leading people in this competition. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I could have solved these riddles, hell no. It's clear that speaking solely on the book's challenges, they require a heavy knowledge on 80s culture mixed with some gaming skills and good memorization of certain movies. But to keep pushing the idea that Wade is the only super nerd out there really exposes Klein for self-inserting himself and undermining humanity's level of intelligence. Seriously, I find it hard to believe this wasn't solved soon enough. The 80s was a beloved decade, and not only that, but this world is big enough to hold so many other super nerds. Not even nerds. What about hackers, data miners? Like, there could have been more of a challenge than just Artemis and the IOI as a collective. To name a few, I think of people like Black Nerd Andre or Cinemassacre, who could have had a good shot for the prize. But the book portrays everyone except Wade as incompetent and stupid, like IROC, who was not at all as he was portrayed in the movie. In the book, he was just a gunter Wade felt intellectually superior over, and the only significance he had to the story was revealing the fact that Wade and H were from Ludus, where the first challenge was located. That was it. So it was quite surprising that he had a much more prominent role in the film as Sorrento's underling. A good surprise though, he was probably one of the best things about that movie. His dynamic with Sorrento, just seeing this big CEO man and casual player interact with each other. It had some good jokes.
How long does it last, this orb thing?
I'd say about 10 million years, so we should be fine.
The movie placed all the characters on an equal playing field, while in the book, Wade was just looking down at anyone not in his squad. There are some cases where it makes sense, like in one portion of the book, Wade becomes tech support for IOI, and listening to some of the problems is both accurate and justifies some of humanity's stupidity. And I bet some of you are thinking, Mike, come on, stop nitpicking. He's the main character, alright? He's supposed to have an advantage. Alright, I'll give you that. So let me just go into my next issue and complain that Wade has too much of an advantage. He's a complete Gary Sue. For anyone who doesn't know, a Gary Sue or Mary Sue describes a character who's just perfect in every way and doesn't encounter flaws unless the plot demands it. In the case of Wade Watts, this kid has dedicated his whole life to studying Halliday, learning about every game he's played and every movie he's watched. He's become a complete genius about Halliday and everything about the 80s, so nothing could really pose a challenge to him. And that got boring fast. I'm not upset about the fact he was smart, but that Klein didn't write in better conflicts that matched his intelligence. The only struggle I could really see was him trying to solve the cryptic riddles, but once those were cleared, everything else was easy. After winning the first challenge, he was offered so many promotions and sponsorships that he was making enough bank to afford literally anything and not worry about his life after Sorrento blew up his trailer stack. Even IOI and the Sixers aren't really a problem because he's always so careful to avoid any run-ins and purposely got himself caught to hack into their security system so he could program a droid to defuse an antimatter friction induction bomb. There was no chance. Like the movie, in the book, Wade can just hack his way into a corporation with information he got from a black market, and it's all just... He went from a super nerd to a cyber hacker and his abilities just know no bounds. After getting the first key and gate, I just stopped caring because there was no reason to worry. There was no sort of tension or anything that made me believe that he was going to lose. He was too smart, he was too rich, he was too careful. He essentially became Batman. He was written not to lose. Even when he wins the whole competition, his reward is having control over the Oasis and becoming the most OP avatar in the entire virtual space. As if he really needed more power. The only part that felt really earned was getting that quarter. Following the possible lead to the Jade Key, Wade travels to Arcade, home of the Oasis' largest classic video game museum. He doesn't find the key, but stumbles upon Happy Time Pizza, a pizza parlor Halliday would run off to several times in his childhood. Wade discovers an out-of-order Pac-Man machine that threw him off because why would a simulation have something out of order, right? He plugs the machine in, working just fine, and sees that the high score is 10 points short of a perfect game. Feeling he found an Easter egg, Wade brushed up on his extensive Pac-Man knowledge and played the game for 6 hours straight until he got a perfect game, earning the quarter as his prize. Now the book and movie make it clear that if you die in the game, you die forever. Nah, I'm just kidding. But you do lose your avatar. If your character was killed in the Oasis, you will have to create a new avatar and start from scratch. All those levels and items and other valuables you grinded over the years would just be gone, making this little coin the most valuable item you could hold. It's a second life, and it proved its worth when the catalyst was set off to prevent Wade from advancing. Lucky for him though, his little detour earned him the path to victory. This whole Pac-Man adventure was how he got this amazing quarter, and the movie just gives it to him so easily. It's beyond frustrating, dude.
Oh wow, a quarter.
To be fair though, this might have been to summarize Ogden Morrow's role in the book. By the end of the movie, you learn that the curator was Halliday's old friend Morrow, becoming the literal lifesaver to Wade's win. In the book though, he gave him much more than a quarter. At the request of a dying friend, he was to watch over the competition to see if there was any need to step in. He offered Wade and his gang the security of his home, as well as high-tech immersion rigs, connections to the Oasis, and literally anything else they could use for the final battle. Even so, I wish there was a better way for him to get that quarter. I mean, come on now, stop throwing it around like it's a regular old quarter. It has meaning. Most of this book feels like one big ego stroke and quite isolating too, since this competition really emphasizes every man for himself. For me, characters make the story engaging, and I felt myself zoning off, having to be stuck with Wade most of the time, and his abundance of references I didn't care much for. Not like the actual interactions were any better, in my opinion. Most of the dialogue is very generic with low personality, and the whole subplot with Wade and Artemis is just, ugh, why was that even a thing? Don't answer that. I know exactly why, but I mean, why? Dude, Klein actually put the competition in the backseat for this weak-ass romance. He did not know how to build authentic chemistry, and every time it had to come back to this, I just rolled my eyes and hoped it would be short. When you finally get to Wade clearing the first key and gate, it was very exciting and things were starting to ramp up until all the promotions and sponsors and Artemis started to get in the way, and it takes a while before he finds the next key. The movie did a better job with that flow. Was it accurate? No, but I was getting more of what this story promised with a better plot structure and more modern properties that tickled my nostalgia and make me go, yo, it's The Shining, damn, let's go Iron Giant. That's all. That's it. That's all I wanted from the experience. That was the selling point Spielberg capitalized on and what makes the movie more entertaining than the book. I'll admit that half of the book's references flew over my head, but even so, there's no beating the visuals and witnessing recognizable mascots and properties on screen. Their visit to The Shining was awesome, and that final clash between the Gunters and Sixers, incredible. Book, movie, they were both great and worth the price of admission. Just reminiscent of an age playing with your toys and staging imaginary fights, except it's real and alive and such a tremendous feeling you can't help but smile. The book did a lot with creating the world, but the movie certainly knew how to take advantage of the assets and create an adventure that appealed to all the masses without making some feel like an idiot for not getting the most obscure references. Gotta give the movie that. Now, if I were to ask you what the point of this whole story was, what would you tell me? That we should spend more time in our own reality? That the internet is E for everyone? The world is made up of winners and losers? If you guessed all 3, then my god, we need to talk. I don't mind juggling of any sorts, but it should be done with some balance. The problem I had with this book was that Klein would introduce these themes, but they weren't as prominent as you'd expect. This is a pretty chunky book, with most of the material full of references and drag plotting, so whenever he takes a moment to emphasize these topics that are meant to be taken as revelations, my reaction was always, sure? Alright, maybe I'm being a little harsh over this, or maybe I was just so done with this book that I stopped caring halfway through. But in regards to Wade's character, he represented the generation that grew up with the Oasis. All his life, all his schooling was done through the Oasis, and growing up in the slums with his aunt certainly didn't give him a good impression of the real world. But the Oasis, or more specifically Halliday's egg, gave him reasons never to leave. Outside, he was just a fat nerd with zero social skills and lacked any confidence, but with the ability to change his appearance and become knowledgeable in the competition, he felt like a champ. This was his world, and I can understand why he wouldn't give 2 shits about reality until he got his wake-up call in the form of Artemis. There's a scene in the book where these two talk about what they'll do with the fortune, and while Wade here is talking about materialistic things, Artemis is thinking bigger and wanting to better the world they live in. What I appreciated about the movie is that her presence showed the story's portion on reality, while her goals were aimed at the net neutrality side of things, trying to keep the Oasis out of the hands of Sorrento and all of IOI. There's mention of the war between Gunthers and Sixers, although it's merely in the background of the story, and not really the focus point until the final clash. The movie introduced this whole rebelling faction that Artemis was a part of, and brought it all together with Wade's speech.
In the name of James Halliday himself, help us save the Oasis.
It meant something here, while Bookway was just looking for a distraction so he could sneak inside the castle. And also, I'm just a sucker for these kinds of endings, and it earns bonus points for those Back to the Future feels. Just a classic Spielberg moment. Even Sorrento couldn't fight the magic of a Spielberg ending and just accepted the rest. You can't tarnish the cheese, my dude, it's too strong! This ending pretty much goes the same as the book, with this ghost hologram of Halliday telling Wade to spend more time in the real world, but the movie makes it way easier to see all the prior events leading towards this direction. Not just with Wade's relationship with Artemis, but the whole competition in general. Parts of it were heavily tied to Halliday's life, highlighting the leaps he didn't take with Kira, or the regret of making Morrow sign over his shares. Storytelling is not just putting a bunch of scenes together that sound cool, but they also reflect on what you're trying to say, and it seems rewarding for a reader or viewer to make some connection with the concluding revelations. I feel like Klein had a lot to say but didn't know how to properly keep them afloat, so the message was lost along the way and made the overall message much more confusing. Spielberg, on the other hand, saw what Klein was trying to say and managed to weave those messages tightly to the narrative. Some parts of the original story were scrapped, yes, but at least in this version, I have a clear idea of what Klein wanted to speak upon. While it is fun to live in your own fantasy world, don't let it keep you from reality, and take a break every now and then. Jeez. That smelled terrible, but still a better experience than the book. Look, even Klein himself admitted he knew how problematic the story was and was glad to have Spielberg work on the story, bringing out the best moments you'd want from an adaptation. The riddle and challenges have an extra layer of importance, the characters are a lot stronger, and just a fun popcorn flick to sit back and enjoy visually. I can't for the life of me recommend this to anyone without being sarcastic. I'd say that if the idea of the Oasis appealed you, then you could pick up the book because it has a lot more details of what it could possibly offer. But as for the story side of things, the adventures, all that, you can't go wrong with the movie, faults and all. And that's my final word on it. Anyways, yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next review. Take care.